controlling many learners at a time, but when all is done accordingly, it eases the stress.
Let's move now to a story that rocked South Africa at the time that it happened, and it's still a highly emotional issue. The family of Leigh Matthews say they're disappointed with the country's parole process. The 21-year-old student was kidnapped and murdered in 2004 after a ransom was paid for her release. Donovan Moodley was convicted of the crime, but he may be a free man soon. Our reporter, Linda Kulu, attended a briefing that was held by the family a little earlier. Let's get the latest from him. So, Linda, it was clear to see that Leigh Matthews' father is just still so broken and so emotional about this. And can you tell us a little bit more about how they came to hear that Donovan Moodley might be getting parole?
Well, one thing, Sally, that's for sure is that the father, as well as the family, have been keeping abreast with exactly what is happening with the case. According to their understanding, they had some sigh of relief, some breathing space, as far as they understood that the case would only be eligible for parole. The Moodley would only be eligible for parole in 2030, but that wasn't the case when they got the call from one of the people they were consulting with in terms of what they need to do at that time to ensure that Moodley stays behind bars. And the revelation was that, in fact, Moodley would be eligible for parole this year. So what they're saying is that they were shocked, they didn't understand exactly what was happening, and that is why they were seeking help in terms of what it is exactly that they need to do. But certainly a distraught father who is saying that it's unbelievable that at this stage there is even a consideration that Moodley might be let out. But he says that he was shocked, but what he wants is for Moodley to remain behind bars. Maybe let's just take a listen to what he said earlier on in that press conference about this revelation that he got when he was just trying to follow up on certain things to do when parole comes.
The feedback that I got in 2017 was, it might be 2018, that Moodley was eligible for parole in 2030, July 2030. So as a family, we parked that to one side because we'd been through the emotional roller coaster of all these court cases, and I said we can now actually start our healing, that we have a number of years before he comes up for parole, and we can start preparing for that parole. So in 2019, I approached Professor Labaskachny, who's a well-known criminal psychologist, and asked him, would you help us start putting together that information that you think would be pertinent to keeping Moodley in jail if rehabilitation had not taken place, and what does rehabilitation look like? He came back to me and said, Rob, you know that Moodley's up for a parole hearing early in 2020. I said, that can't be right. I've got confirmation from somebody in Correctional Services that told me the exact month and year as to when this would happen. So we went back into the system, jumped through a whole lot of loops again, and I found that there were two cases that made a big difference to Moodley and his parole hearing. The unintended benefit, I believe, that Moodley got out of these cases is diabolical.
Sure. You can see that Leigh Matthews' dad is just angry and really, really sad. So they've also brought in Women and Men Against Child Abuse, which is a rights group. What is their role in all of this?
Well, their role basically as an advocacy group against a crime, women and children, what they are doing now is saying that they do not believe that a person who's committed such a heinous crime should be let out of prison. They're saying that from their research and from following the case, they've seen that he hasn't shown any form of remorse. He hasn't even given the family the closure they need in terms of what exactly happened, where their daughter was kept when he was demanding ransom for her. And so they're saying that while the details are still sketchy, it's unbelievable that he would even think of trying to get parole. They're saying that over the years, he's even made several applications trying to get out of prison. And they're saying that this is a person that's demonstrating that they do not have any remorse, except that they just want to escape from the reality they find themselves that Moodley finds himself in. So what they are doing is representing the family. They have commissioned an attorney from their organization to actually represent them as they try and oppose the bail. But they're saying that they are for the view that he shouldn't be let out, and they'll be helping the family moving from this point on. But let's take a listen again to the advocacy group, just giving us a sense of how they will be assisting the family.
When we look at the scales of justice and the idea that justice is blind, we feel that our presence is essential in this debate to tip the scales where correctional services are promoting the rights of their inmate without regard for the victim, in our opinion. We are here to add weight to that voice. And in conclusion, we just want to make our final point very clear. None of us as citizens made a social contract to participate in a predetermined process that releases murderers and rapists who are not rehabilitated nor remorseful back into our communities. I didn't sign up for that. It is not for the murdered families, the murdered victim's family, to show the reasons Mr. Moodley should not be released. It is for him and Correctional Services to show why he should.
Yeah, the emphasis seems all the wrong way round. What is Correctional Services saying about the progress of Donovan Moodley's parole?
Well, what they're basically saying is that this is standard procedure in terms of what needs to happen with every inmate when they serve a certain period of time of their sentence. They then need to be considered for parole, whether they apply for it or not. And they're saying that this is just due process unfolding. What is said to happen is that when all the evidence is gathered from psychologists and all relevant stakeholders, that will give a profile of what Moodley has been like as an inmate and whether he's remorseful or not. When all of that unfolds, then the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, is the one that needs to take a decision. This is because this is a murder case. If it was a rape case as well, he would be the one personally liable to actually give out parole, whether he grants it or not. So they're saying that that process is unfolding, and that is why the family was alerted that there will be parole. But they're saying at this stage there is no parole appearance, parole application. It's a matter of just gathering that evidence so that when the time comes, they are able to hand it over to the Minister of Justice so that he can make a decision. But that's the process. They're saying that it unfolds for each and every inmate when they serve a certain portion of their time in prison.
But if, as the family is saying, Moodley's showing absolutely no remorse, that suggests he might go out and do it again. Surely, what exactly did the family say in regard?
Well, the family says that he hasn't shown remorse. They don't know the story, as I said earlier on, and all they want is to see him in prison. In fact, because of the manner in which the family believes he conducted himself, they saying that they don't even want to, forgive him. They don't want to interact with him unless it is going to give them answers. So at this stage, they want nothing to do with him, and they want him to simply serve his time that he got, which is a life sentence. It is 15 years for kidnapping as well as 10 years for extortion. So they're saying that they want to see him serving all of that time, and that is why they were actually calling on the women and men against child abuse to actually help them in making sure that that happens. But you can take a listen to the father again, just giving us a sense of what it is that they want and what they believe about Moodley's character.
Do you know that up until 2018, that was the last appeal that Moodley made? He was fighting this all the way from 2005 to 2018, not once admitting guilt, not once admitting remorse, but finding a way through the justice system. Do you know he studied his LLB? And that studying of his LLB had nothing to do with helping anybody else other than himself to find a way out of his predicament. So the roller coaster ride goes on and on and on.
And what an awful roller coaster ride it continues to be, clearly, for Leigh Matthews' family. It's interesting, however, they do make the point. They're not against parole as such, but in this particular case, they say he's shown absolutely no remorse. And they also say, as you were referencing earlier, life has to mean life. Otherwise, what does it actually mean? If you take someone's life, you have to serve life in prison. Well, thank you so much for bringing us that really important story. That was our reporter, Linda Kutlek-Bulu there. Still to come on South Africa tonight, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the country's harbours need to operate more efficiently. That story in a moment.